You comfortable?
Mm-hmm.
And you might want to talk a little louder than usual just so we can hear you on the recording since you're so far away.
Be sure to let me know when we start.
We are starting.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay,
Um,
then I'll speak up.
and we've been together for a while. So, as you know, everything that is said in here is confidential. Um, it's only if you talk about anything of like hurting yourself or somebody else getting hurt, I need to report that. So I'm just checking in with you about that.
Okay.
And um, today, what I want you to think about is an early recollection. So maybe something, a memory that you have that is um, before the age of 10. If you can just take a moment and think about an early recollection.
Any kind of memory? Like
Mm-hmm.
any kind?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you want to suggest a kind or just anything?
Nope, anything.
Huh. There are a lot. It's not that I can't remember any.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to have you pick two. So just talk about the first one that comes to mind.
Um, Apropos of nothing, I remember my dad walking home from work. He worked at the Capitol, and I would see him coming about a block away, and I just remember running down. It was slightly downhill, or he was walking a little slightly uphill, and I remember running downhill to meet him. And I must have been about 5 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was home from the war by that time and working at the Capitol. So that's how I figure it must have been about 5. I remember that. And I remember roller skating up and down the sidewalk on my side of the street with my friend Judy. We had the roller skates that you had to have the skate key to put on. Metal roller skates that clamped onto your shoes. So you had to have shoes that had a little bit of a sole that stuck out. So leather shoes, good leather shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So that the clamp had something to clamp onto. And we kind of preferred the sidewalk on the across the street, but there were old people living over there that didn't want us skating in front of their house, which I think is kind of funny now because I think it would be really fun to see kids skating in front of my house.
Mm-hmm.
But these old couples, there were several old couples that would sit there, and I just remember they didn't like us roller skating on that side of the street.
Do you remember any other details?
I'm just thinking a lot about the front yard of the house that I lived in when I was little, and things that went on there. And I remember my dad made me a butterfly catcher because we were visiting my grandparents, and we were in a store that my grandpa needed to go in to get something for the farm. And I saw what I thought looked like a perfect butterfly catcher, and it turned out it was a net that goes over the nose of a horse
Oh, huh.
to keep flies away from the horse. It's called a horse nose net. And my dad made a handle for it out of a branch that went into a Y shape. So each side fastened onto a side. I wonder where that is. And I used to catch a lot of butterflies with that. And then I remember one time I was riding up the street on my bike, and I heard my little sister running after me. I was in the street, she was on the sidewalk, and she was running. And she fell so hard it just knocked the wind out of her, and I just remember throwing my bike down and running and picking her up. She must have been little. She was little, like 3 maybe.
So, let's pick 2 of those. The first one you talked about was going to meet your dad when he was walking home from work. Do you remember just your feelings about that? Just what you were.
It was just happy, happy feelings. And he was jolly to see me. He probably picked me up and carried me for a while, and then we walked. I mostly remember running to meet him. I remember how he looked when he walked, because he always pointed his toes outward a little bit. And he always had a fedora hat.
Oh, interesting. And then, what the second recollection? Roller skating with your friend.
Yeah, you know what? I think I remember a lot of movement and freedom, like roller skating and running and biking. I remember riding down the alley behind the house, and it was kind of bumpy, and it wasn't, I don't even think it was paved. And the sense of freedom that I had. I think when I think back, that's a feeling that I had, just freedom and being and running and skating and biking. Just in my neighborhood.
Right, and I was going to bring that up with the 2 recollections. You're young in both of those scenarios, and at 5, you're running away from your house to go meet your dad, who's walking home from his job, and just the ability to do it.
I just thought of another one. This is probably a really early one. I know I was at least 2, because it was summertime, and we moved into the house when I was 16 months old, and that was in the winter, so I probably was 2. And my mom and I had just gotten out of the bathtub, and I ran outside, and she couldn't chase me because she wasn't dressed yet. And I remember I sat down on the curb, and the wrestlers, the old couple across the street, were out there, and I remember Mary Rustler asking, "Does your mom know you're outside?" And I remember my mom, I think she was at the door looking out the door, and she couldn't come after me because she wasn't even dressed. Oh, and another one, I'm remembering a lot of running away things, I think. Another one, I just remember that I was in somebody's house, in their house, and I was looking out their front door, and they found me there. And I don't remember how I got there, but apparently I had walked away from the house, and my parents were looking all over for me, and I was just maybe 2 or 3 maybe, and I don't know how long I was gone, but they were worried sick. They were worried. They looked all over the place for me, and I remember my mom had a dried bean in her hand, and she said that she was so worried that she was chewing on that bean while they were looking for me.
Yeah, so those are a lot of...
I guess there's a theme to that, isn't there?
Yeah. That's...
What is it? Running
but
away or feeling free?
I feel like, well, you can tell me. It just seems like the way you're describing is there's a happiness there and a feeling of trust, maybe.
And exploring
Mm-hmm.
and feeling grounded, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of exploring. I would take a group of neighbor kids, and we would go up to the Capitol grounds, which was about 5 blocks away, and there was a big slough there that's now been filled in, and they built the junior college there. But anyway, it used to be full of little frogs and butterflies and
Mm-hmm.
dragonflies. We would just walk over there and look for wild things.
So when you think about these early recollections, if we kind of bring it down to maybe a sentence that describes who you are, what do you think you could come up with?
I never really thought about it, but all of those things have to do with the natural world and exploring, looking, trying to find new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I always felt like I had a solid anchor at home. I wasn't trying to leave home. I always felt like I could go as far as I wanted, and home would always be there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And my parents must have encouraged that too, because they never said no to those things.
Yeah. There isn't this feeling like you're going to be in trouble.
No, never.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, we'll look at this a little further the next session we have.
Okay.
Those were good stories.